definitely don't need it. I 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 need it!
What's going on, everybody? It's me, Burrito, and I'm going to be going over how to be a competitive One Piece player. A bit about me is I'm still relatively new to the game. I started out in OP09, but since then I've gone to locals and I've won. I got up to number 15 on the ranked sim, and I just want to share my knowledge that I've gotten with you guys. So before we get started, if you like this content, please leave a like and comment. I'm doing this for you guys. I don't make money off this, so show your support and hopefully it'll motivate me to make more content for you. With that being said, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, tip number one is going to be to know every deck. It's obvious enough that you need to know the deck that you're playing well, but it's also super important to know at least the meta decks because you're going to need a game plan going into every matchup. Things that you should know should include: how does this leader try to gain an advantage? What cards does this leader typically run? Why do they run those cards? How many 1K and 2K counter cards do they have? What do they struggle with? So for this, I'm going to go into a quick example with GP Luffy here. I'm not going to go too in-depth, just kind of a quick gloss over, but if you're interested in seeing more stuff like this, maybe about more decks in the meta, or more about GP Luffy, let me know in the comments. Alright, and make sure to pause and read if you don't know any of these cards. So the plan for GP Luffy is typically to go second, and then on turn 1, they're going to want to play Nami and Mary Go, typically to search for their Sanji Pudding or Zorojuro if they don't have it. So turn 2, play Zorojuro, and then turn 3, they're going to want to play their Sanji and Pudding, and then use their leader ability, and then play out another Zorojuro. So filling up the board pretty quickly, and they become a 6k leader. And then typically the plan after that is to play more Sanji and Puddings, and then eventually end the game with this 6 cost Monkey D. Luffy, and defend with Gum Gum Giant. So, what's some of GP Luffy's weaknesses? One weakness is that it's a 4-life leader, so it can be a little susceptible to aggro decks. Runs a lot of bricks, so they can have a lot of cards in hand, but not have a lot of counter. And especially they don't have a lot of 1k counters. So if you're swinging for 5 when they're a 5k leader and they're defending with a 2k, you know that they don't have any 1k counters in their hand. And also they can't get rid of large bodies easily. To get rid of large bodies, you're going to have to stack Dawn on one of their characters, and when they return Dawn, they can't set the Dawn that's attached back to active, so it is going to be kind of a pain for them to get rid of those large bodies. So, how are you going to exploit this? So, you try to remove Sanji and Pudding as soon as possible to make their leader ability either so they don't play their leader ability, or so that using it is just not as helpful because they can't gain all the Dawn back. You're typically going to want to swing at their base power, or base power plus 2k to dwindle their hand size down. Again, like mentioned earlier, they don't run a lot of 1ks, so there's no point in swinging, let's say 7k when they're at 6k leader, because they're just going to give you a 2k even if you swung 6k, so that's just a waste. And you're going to want to play large bodies if your deck runs them. Okay, it's always super important to know your matchup. How do you exploit these weaknesses with the leader that you're choosing? I'm going to specifically go over Lim here because I'm a Lim main and I know this matchup the best. So, for this matchup, typically you're going to want to build a board that's pretty wide of 5k and 6k power cards that can restand themselves, because Green Purple Luffy doesn't run a lot of removal, so it's going to be hard for him to kind of get rid of these cards. And then force him to swing into life here, because you want to get more cards in your hand, you want to build a wide board, and you want to pressure him early because he's a 4-life leader. You're going to want to use Sakazuki to get rid of Sanji and Puddings if they don't play the Merry Go stage. And you're going to want to end up playing Mihawk in the later game to pressure life and board. So going back to this page of GP Luffy's weaknesses, what I'm exploiting here is the fact that he's a 4-life leader, that he runs a lot of bricks, and that he doesn't have a lot of 1k counters by pressuring him early and by using Mihawk to get a bunch of attacks into his life early on. Typically, I don't want it going past like 6 or 7 turns because my deck doesn't run large bodies, so that's kind of the only way to get around it. And just keep in mind, guys, you should know this for every meta matchup. You need to be prepared for what they're going to bring to the table. Okay, tip number 2 is going to be to take note of everything. So, first off, did they mulligan? If they mulligan, they're most likely going to have a worse hand than if they didn't mulligan. There's a high likelihood that they're not seeing a lot of cards that they need, and that you can play a little bit differently if you see that they mulliganed. Are they seeing their ideal curve? Let's say for GP Luffy, on turn 1 when they have 2 Dawn, are they playing 2 Namis? Because that's going to throw off their curve, right? They want to play the Merry-Go stage. They want to up the cost of their Sanjin Pudding. And if you don't play that on turn 1, they're going to have to play that on either turn 2, so they're not going to be able to play Zoro, or they're going to have to play that on turn 3, and they're not going to play Sanjin Pudding and then Zoro after that. So how would you exactly take advantage of something like that? So let's say they play those 2 Namis, and on the second Nami, they find the Merry-Go. You know that they're going to want to probably play that next turn so that they can play the Sanji Pudding Zoro on turn 3. So maybe it's a good idea to keep a Whitebeard instead of using it as counter, because he's likely going to play something like a 3-cost Frankie or something that's lower than 4 cost because he's going to use a stage next turn. So it's better to hold on to that. Or let's say that they don't find the Merry-Go with either of the Namis, then it's probably going to be better to hold on to Sakazuki because you know they're not going to up the cost of their Sanjin Pudding and that you can get rid of it when they play it. What are they drawing from their search? Did they use a Nami and maybe search a Luffy Taro? They're probably going to play it if they search it, so just keep that in mind that when they have 7 Dawn, they're probably going to play Luffy Taro, and it's likely going to be into another Sanji Pudding. What are they discarding? If they play a Gum Gum Giant and the card they decide to discard is another Gum Gum Giant, you bet they probably have another one in their hand, because they probably wouldn't discard a Gum Gum Giant if they didn't have another one already. And are they taking life aggressively? Are they not defending their board? Is their hand full of bricks? Maybe. It's very possible for this kind of deck to have a lot of bricks. Tip 3, what to swing at. Again, this one is always going to be very situational and matchup dependent. Typically, if you're Lim, you take out the Frankie early because you know that swing will just come back at you if you don't take it out. And usually they just let it go. Are you going to be able to get rid of the card? Do they have a large hand size? Do you think they're going to be able to defend? Is it worth swinging into a card that's like, per se, Sanjin Pudding that has high base stats, 7,000 power? Or maybe you could just swing into life. Think about what you're swinging into and what power it has, because they're going to have to discard a certain amount of cards based on the power of what you're swinging and what they're defending. Do you want them to defend? Maybe they have a lot of cards and you want to dwindle their hand size a little bit. Maybe swinging into life is just going to keep building that hand, and that's something that you don't want in that current state, so you're going to swing at board instead. Maybe you're trying to bait them into using a little bit of counter and then doing a bigger swing later, so they're going to have to get rid of it. And then what is their hand size? If they only have a couple cards in their hand, they're likely not going to have the counter to be able to defend their board very well, so swinging maybe 7k at these Sanjin Puddings isn't a bad idea. Maybe if you swing 7k at a Sanjin Pudding and they let go of it immediately, you're probably going to want to swing 7k into the next one because they likely have a lot of bricks in their hand. And finally, can you pressure going for game by swinging at life? There are certain situations where it's better just to ignore the board and to swing at life because it's going to create so much pressure that they can't really do anything on the next turn besides play blockers and defend. And of course you want to think about what can they do next turn. So for GP Luffy specifically, let's say for example he has 1 life and you have 1 attack left. So you know you can't go for game, but you could go and take his life right now, so maybe it'll be easier for next turn. But you need to think about the cards that he's going to play. He could just play this 6-cost Luffy and then not take the effect of having to take the life. In that case, you should have just swung at board because he got out of a free attack by just taking the attack into his life when he was just going to get rid of that card anyways. Okay, tip number 4, when to counter. So, unfortunately this one's also going to be very situational and matchup dependent, so some things to think about are going to be what do they have left in their turn. So, are they going to play more cards after this? Do you think they're going to attach Dawn to their leader and swing something bigger? If they're swinging at you with something like this 5,000 power Zoro, maybe it's a better idea just to counter out of this one because you know that another attack is coming from the leader. or another attack is coming from another card that they already played. How many swings will come and how large? Again, some of the same stuff. What could they play? They could play the Rush Luffy and come at you with 2 7k attacks. That's something you need to think about. What are they going to swing at next? Let's say they're going for your board right now, and they're going after your Whitebeard, which is 6,000 power, and the only thing you have rested besides that is a Sakazuki. In certain cases, it's better to just let it go, because you know they're going to have to swing at something bigger after that attack. Do you want them to swing at life? Maybe there's times where you want to let something go, and then have them swing at your life after so you can get more cards. Maybe you happen to get your win condition in your last life before your last turn, and you can win the game with that. Maybe as a very specific example, you play Orochi on turn 1, see that there's a Mihawk in life, and then you know that you need to take that life next turn so you can win the game. Okay, my final tip today is going to be go to locals. At the end of the day, the sim is not the same as playing in person. The sim sometimes can be a little brain rotty, and people don't play optimally, and sometimes you just would never figure that out if you weren't playing across from another person. Playing at locals makes you just think about every move a little bit more. Having the cards in your hand is a different experience. And then you can get tips from people there too. Everybody there is always super nice. They're willing to help out. And you can ask about their deck, ask about their matchups, ask how they deal with certain things. The people there, they like the game, and it's important to get the knowledge from other people. It's important to get that outside perspective. Alright, with that being said, thank you for watching. Again, please like and comment if you enjoyed this content, and goodbye.